Achilles. It's gonna be a tough video. I can't pronounce his name quite right. Hello and welcome back to Cuckoo for Books. My name is Salva and today I'm going to be doing a book review on The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book review has been a long time coming, and me reading this book has in fact been a long time coming. I received it as a birthday gift from a very good friend about 4 years ago, and since then I've heard nothing but good things, whether it be online or friends saying, I've read The Song of Achilles, have you? It's amazing. So I decided 4 years later, that's how long it takes for me to get through my TBR. 4 years later, I finally said I'm gonna sit down and read it. So this is a general fiction novel. It's not YA, quite different from our usual fare on this channel. This book is set in ancient Greece. It's a retelling of the Iliad, or at least one part of the Iliad, particularly focusing on the stories of Achilles and Patroclus and the Trojan War. Now this book has further disproven my bias against one particular trope in historical fiction, and the more I read books that involve this historical fiction trope, the more I'm like, oh, maybe I don't hate this trope, maybe I like it. In fact, I don't know if there's a real name for it, but I call it the trope of a legend through the eyes of a not-so-legend. For example, Rebel Queen by Michelle Moran, a historical novel that I loved immensely, is about the last queen of India, but you don't get it from the point of view of the last queen of India. You read the book through the eyes of her second-in-command slash lady-in-waiting slash warrior sidekick. Again, with The Song of Achilles, it's not Achilles telling the story, but it's Patroclus telling Achilles' story. I used to think that I wasn't into that sort of storytelling, but the more I read of it, the more I'm actually quite on board with it. A little backstory: I fancy myself familiar enough with Greek mythology and the Iliad and the Odyssey to have a general sense of what goes on, but not enough that the story is sort of old hat to me. I know the setting, I know the problems, the issues, I know what goes on, but I'm not familiar enough with the story to know about all the little quibbles and the little fights and a list of who died and who doesn't die. The author took 10 years writing this novel, and I'm sure there must have been references that just went over my head and I did not get at all. I sort of knew where the start line was, I knew where the end line was, I had no idea what would go on in the middle, and that made for quite the treat in reading it. I really thought that the beginning was very slow. It started off really slow, but once it got going, my goodness. I understand the predicament that the author is in, because with historical fictional novels, wow, that is a mouthful, a lot of these characters' stories span lifetimes and decades, and it's very hard to, within 350 pages, to give you a good glimpse of a life. It's always interesting to see how different authors play that out. I do think that Miller spent a little too much time in the childhood phase of Achilles and Patroclus, just because you knew where they were going, you knew the love they had for each other and the bonds that they had, and at the same time you knew that this wasn't going to be a book about two 13-year-olds. There's no way, because we're headed towards the Trojan War. It says so in the summary of the book, so why are we pacing around and dilly-dallying around a bunch of 13-year-olds learning how to hunt and gather berries and taking baths in rivers? While I do think that that part was definitely necessary, I do think it could have been shortened. I think it was about 100-200 pages in, and we were still in what I like to think is the prologue of their story, because nothing was really happening. Things were happening to the protagonists versus them taking an active stand. It was Patroclus being shipped around from kingdom to kingdom. We didn't really get to see a lot of character development other than growing up, other than physical character development. So once we start hitting Patroclus and Achilles being like 18, 17, 18, 19, that's when the story really gets going. And then by the time they hit the Trojan War, I could not put the book down. I was picking it up every second I could get. You know that the author knows what she's talking about, and she has such a vivid way of writing and a beautiful way of writing, and this book deserves to be called The Song of Achilles. Not the legend of Achilles, not the book of Achilles, it's the song, because the way Miller writes, it's music. I wish I could have had an audiobook of this novel, because her way with words is just beautiful and clearly better than what I have a way with the words with, because not so good with the words today, am I? But it's beautiful, and even when it goes to, you know, the more action-packed scenes, it's just so vivid that you can picture everything. Even though I've never been to Greece, I've never finished a movie about Troy, I've never seen it on a TV show, I'm not familiar with the era, and yet I pictured captured everything so distinctly in my mind, and that was due to her writing, painting the picture for me. The characters, which I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, because in general, Greek heroes are not the most sympathetic characters. A lot of them are big asses. So I don't know if it's a good thing that I didn't really vibe with Patroclus or Achilles. That's either the author doing her job right or the author doing her job wrong, that I wasn't able to sympathize with them. Or did she do it right, because Greek characters and Greek heroes are supposed to be ass wipes anyway. Patroclus at the beginning, from the first chapter alone, you know that he is this precious cinnamon roll that needs to be protected, and I loved him for a while, and then he grew up, and then it kept going and going, and he still was playing second banana and second fiddle and not standing up for himself. There came a point when you were just like, dude, I can't keep defending you, Patroclus. Your priorities, man. So I don't want to go into spoilers for this novel. Also, because with historical novels, it's really hard to even have spoilers, because to find out the end of a historical fiction novel, all you gotta do is type in a Google search of that particular era in time. The ending, I thought, you know, my friend said, oh my gosh, you're gonna cry. I never cry. It's very tough to get me to cry. I do understand why people would cry. I personally didn't, but I still felt the weight of the ending, and I thought it was very beautifully done. Although, from a storytelling point, I understood why at that point after the fall of Troy, the narrative really picked up and went bam, bam, bam. I do wish we could have had a more gradual letting go of the book, because the book leaves you so emotionally invested. Like them or not, you're emotionally invested in these characters because you've known them or read about them since they were kids. So I do wish that the ending had been a little less abrupt, instead of like, beautiful story, let's pack it up, goodbye. That's how it felt to me. In conclusion, I've been saying in conclusion a lot lately, and I don't know why. I think this is a great book to bring on a trip or to the beach. It's really easy reading. Like, you could fly through 50 pages in a day. I'm gonna have to think about this. It is on my short list of favorite books for 2019. We shall see how the rest of the year goes. It is definitely worth the read, and it's just music. I would recommend, if you don't own this book yet, I would like to see how it sounds like on Audible or in any audiobook. Let me know in the comments below if you've listened to this audiobook of the Song of Achilles, because just picturing it, what it sounds like, it sounds downright beautiful. I was gonna say dang, and then it went to downright beautiful, and then now I just said downright beautiful. My mind is going. Time to end this review. And that about does it for my The Song of Achilles book review. You can follow me on my other bookish adventures on Twitter and Instagram. On Twitter, I'm at Cuckoo for Books. On Instagram, I'm at Cuckoo for Books. And at Salve Villarasa. Please subscribe, and I will see you guys very soon. Bye, guys.